Michael Jackson was surrounded by thousands of people, handlers, managers, lawyers, doctors, fans who would have done anything to be near him. And yet, for most of his life, he trusted almost none of them. He'd been used since he was 5 years old, by the industry, by the press, even by his own family. So Michael learned early to keep his guard up with everyone. But there was one exception, one man he let all the way in, a man who knew his secrets, guarded his life, and never, not once, sold him out. He wasn't a celebrity. He wasn't a manager. Most fans have never even heard his name. And in a private letter, Michael called this man the father he never had. So who was the one person Michael Jackson trusted with everything? Let's get into it. And if you love the real story behind the legend, hit subscribe before we do. His name was Bill Bray. If you saw him, you probably wouldn't have looked twice. He was a retired Los Angeles police officer, decades older than Michael. A big, steady, quiet man who stood off to the side. Not the kind of person the cameras cared about, but Bill Bray was the most important person in Michael Jackson's inner circle for over 25 years. And their story started way back at the beginning. Before the fame, before Thriller, before any of it. Bray began working security for the Jackson family in 1971 through Motown, when Michael was still just a kid in the Jackson 5. So Bill didn't meet the king of pop. He met a little boy. He watched Michael grow up from a child prodigy into the biggest star on the planet, standing right beside him the entire way. And that's the key to understanding this whole relationship. Bill Bray knew Michael before the world turned him into a product. He knew the real person underneath. Now here's where it goes beyond a normal working relationship. There's a story from Bray's own wife, Gail, that says everything. In the early days, when Michael would finish a show, he would run straight off the stage and jump into Bill Bray's arms. Think about that image. The most electric performer in the world, coming off stage, and the first place he wanted to be was safe in the arms of his security guard. Bray became so much more than protection. According to a Rolling Stone profile, Bill took Michael to the doctor when he was sick. He advised him on major business deals. He oversaw every safety detail of his life. People around Michael called Bray his alter ego and his surrogate father, someone woven into every single part of the singer's world. And Michael felt it too. In his 1988 autobiography Moonwalk, Michael wrote about Bill with real love. He said Bray traveled with him everywhere, that Bill was sometimes his only companion on trips. And then he wrote a line that says it all: "I can't imagine life without Bill." He called him warm, funny, and a great man. But the single most powerful piece of evidence for how much Michael trusted this man didn't come out until years later. Around 1992, Michael Jackson sat down and wrote Bill Bray a private, handwritten letter. It wasn't meant for the public. It only surfaced publicly years afterward. And when you read it, you understand everything. In that letter, Michael thanked Bray for being the father his own father never was. He wrote that Joseph, his real dad, never had time for him, that Joseph only ever saw him as a way to make money. He wrote that his mother was a perfect mother, but that his childhood was spent on a stage, away from her. And then he wrote this: to his bodyguard, "Thank you for being a father. I don't know what would have happened to me if you were not around. I love you." Let that sink in. The most famous man in the world, who had a living father and a loving mother, looked at his head of security and said, "You are the one who raised me. You are the father I actually had." That is the deepest kind of trust a person can give. And Michael gave it to Bill Bray. So why Bray? Why did Michael trust this one man when he trusted almost no one? Two reasons. First, Bray never wanted anything from him. In a world where everyone around Michael was chasing money, access, or fame, Bill Bray just did his job and protected the kid he'd watched grow up. There was no angle. And second, Bray never talked. This is huge. Bill Bray was famously press shy. Through all the scandals, all the tabloid frenzy, all the money that reporters would have paid for his stories, Bray never sold a single one. He kept Michael's secrets to the grave. Even near the end of his life, when a reporter caught up with him, Bray said simply, "I don't want to say anything that would hurt Michael." In Michael Jackson's life, loyalty like that was almost impossible to find. That's exactly why it meant everything. There was even tension because of how close they were. Michael's own father, Joe, reportedly complained to a reporter that Bray was keeping him away from his own son. Think about what that means. Michael trusted his bodyguard more than he trusted his own dad, and everyone around them could see it. But this story doesn't have a perfectly happy ending, and it's important to be honest about that. Bill Bray retired in 1996. He was around 70 years old by then, which is old for that kind of demanding security work. And in his final years, the two of them drifted apart. Michael was drowning in his own problems, legal battles, health struggles, chaos, by some accounts. Bray hadn't heard from the Jackson family in years while he was sick and bedridden with cancer. But here's what tells you the bond never really broke. Even after Bray stopped working, Michael kept paying for his medical bills, quietly, right up until the end. And when Bill Bray died in November 2005, at the age of 80, the reaction says everything. Michael, who was living overseas at the time, was reportedly so devastated that he became hysterical when he heard the news. His spokesperson said Michael was, quote, very, very, very saddened, and called Bray a longtime friend, mentor, and trusted advisor. Michael personally reached out to Bray's family. The man who protected him for a quarter of a century was gone. And just under 4 years later, Michael would be gone too. For decades, the world saw the bodyguards around Michael Jackson as just part of the scenery. Big men in dark suits, standing at the edge of the frame. But one of them was the most important person in his life. Bill Bray wasn't just security. He was the father Michael chose, the one man he trusted with his secrets, his safety, and his whole guarded heart when he could trust no one else. And maybe that's the saddest truth of all. The most beloved entertainer who ever lived, adored by billions, found real, unconditional loyalty in exactly one place. Not in his fame, not in his fortune, not even fully in his own family, but in a quiet retired cop who simply loved him and asked for nothing back. So tell me in the comments, did you know about Bill Bray before this? And if you want more stories about the real people behind the legend, hit subscribe because there's a lot more coming.